What happens when royalty meets reality TV? And the gloves come off in spectacular fashion. You won't believe what unfolds when Meghan Markle sits down with Andrea McLean for what was supposed to be a straightforward chat about her latest charitable endeavors. Instead, viewers witnessed one of the most explosive confrontations in loose women history, complete with accusations flying, voices raised, and ultimately, a dramatic walkout that left the entire studio in stunned silence. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when these two powerhouse women go head-to-head in a battle that nobody saw coming. The atmosphere in the Loose Women's studio was electric as Meghan Markle made her entrance, flanked by her usual entourage of publicists and security personnel. Dressed in an elegant cream blazer and matching trousers, she appeared composed and ready for what the production team had briefed as a friendly discussion about her upcoming mental health initiative. The studio audience, packed with devoted fans who had queued for hours to secure their seats, erupted in applause as she settled into the iconic purple chair opposite Andrea McLean. Andrea, known for her direct questioning style and no-nonsense approach, welcomed Meghan with what appeared to be genuine warmth. The first few minutes proceeded smoothly, with Meghan discussing her passion project with animated enthusiasm, her hands gesturing expressively as she spoke about breaking down barriers and supporting vulnerable communities. The audience was captivated, hanging on every word as she painted a picture of hope and transformation. But seasoned viewers of the show would have recognized the subtle shift in Andrea's posture, the way her smile became slightly more fixed, her questions more pointed. "That's wonderful, Meghan," Andrea interjected during a particularly passionate monologue about systemic change. "But some critics have suggested that your approach to charity work has been more about personal brand building than genuine impact. How do you respond to those who say you're using worthy causes as a vehicle for your own publicity?" The question landed like a bomb in the cozy studio setting. Meghan's expression flickered for just a moment, her practiced media smile wavering before she regained her composure. "I find that quite interesting, Andrea," she replied, her voice maintaining its measured tone but with an underlying edge that hadn't been there moments before. "I'm curious about what specifically you're referring to, because my work speaks for itself." The tension in the room was palpable as Andrea leaned forward slightly, her journalist instincts clearly activated. "Well, there have been reports about the significant costs associated with your public appearances, the private jet travel, the designer wardrobes for charitable events. Some have questioned whether the money spent on presentation could have been better used for direct aid to the causes you champion." Meghan's laugh was sharp, cutting through the studio's carefully maintained atmosphere like glass. "Are we really going to do this, Andrea? Are we seriously going to sit here and reduce years of meaningful work to a discussion about clothes and transportation? Because if that's the level of discourse we're operating on, I think we might be wasting everyone's time." The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats, sensing that what had begun as a standard celebrity interview was rapidly transforming into something far more volatile. Andrea's co-hosts exchanged glances, their usual supportive chatter replaced by watchful silence. This wasn't the direction anyone had expected the conversation to take, but Andrea pressed forward with the tenacity that had made her a respected figure in British television journalism. "I think it's a fair question, Meghan," Andrea responded, her tone remaining professional but firm. "Our viewers are interested in transparency, especially when it comes to charitable work that relies on public goodwill and donations. They want to know that their support is being used effectively." "Transparency?" Meghan's voice rose slightly, and for the first time, cracks appeared in her polished media persona. "Let's talk about transparency, shall we? Let's talk about how the British press has consistently attacked every move I've made, every breath I've taken, since the day I stepped foot in this country. Let's discuss how that same press has created narratives out of thin air while ignoring the actual work being done." The studio fell silent, except for the low hum of cameras continuing to roll. Andrea's expression remained neutral, but there was steel in her voice as she responded. "The press scrutiny comes with the territory. Surely you knew that when you married into the royal family. And criticism of public figures engaging in charitable work isn't unique to you. It's standard practice to examine how resources are being used." "Standard practice?" Meghan's composure was beginning to fray at the edges, her voice gaining intensity with each word. Is it standard practice to nitpick every designer outfit while ignoring the millions raised for mental health support? Is it standard practice to question every security arrangement while glossing over the actual death threats that necessitate them? Because if that's your idea of balanced journalism, Andrea, then I think we have very different definitions of the word standard. The confrontation was escalating rapidly, and what had started as pointed questions was becoming a full-scale verbal sparring match. Andrea, recognizing that she had struck a nerve, doubled down with the persistence that had defined her career. I'm not questioning your right to security or appropriate clothing, Meghan. What I'm asking about is proportionality and accountability. When charity events cost more to stage than they raise, don't you think that's worth discussing? The accusation hung in the air like smoke, and Meghan's response came swift and sharp. Show me the receipts, Andrea. Show me a single event where costs exceeded funds raised. Show me one shred of actual evidence for these claims, because what I'm hearing sounds suspiciously like recycled tabloid speculation, dressed up as legitimate journalism. But Andrea wasn't backing down, and as the tension reached a fever pitch, it became clear that this confrontation was heading toward a point of no return that would change everything. Actually, Meghan, I do have receipts, Andrea said, her voice cutting through the charged atmosphere like a blade. She reached for a folder that had been placed discreetly beside her chair, the rustling of papers audible in the now pin-drop silent studio. Our research team spent weeks preparing for this interview, and what they found was quite illuminating. The color drained from Meghan's face as Andrea opened the folder with deliberate precision. The camera zoomed in, capturing every micro-expression as the Duchess realized this wasn't going to be the softball interview her team had negotiated. Your mental health gala in Los Angeles last year, Andrea continued, adjusting her glasses as she scanned the documents. Total funds raised, $230,000. Total production costs, including venue, catering, security, and your styling team, $475,000. That's absolutely fucking ridiculous, Meghan snapped, the profanity slipping out before she could catch herself. The audience gasped collectively, and you could practically hear the social media notifications exploding across the nation. Where the hell are you getting these numbers from? Andrea's eyebrows shot up at the language, but she pressed on relentlessly. These figures come from tax filings that are public record, Meghan. Your foundation's own financial statements. I'm not making this up. I'm reading directly from documents your organization filed with the Charity Commission. You're taking everything out of context. Meghan's voice was rising dangerously, her polished facade cracking wide open. That event was about raising awareness, not just immediate funds. The long-term impact cannot be measured in dollars and cents from a single evening. But surely you can understand why people might be concerned, Andrea pushed, sensing she had gained the upper hand. When struggling families are being asked to donate their hard-earned money to causes you champion, don't they deserve to know that their contributions are being maximized for impact rather than spectacle? The accusation struck home with devastating accuracy. Meghan's hands were shaking now, her carefully constructed composure completely shattered. You know what, Andrea? This is exactly the kind of hit job I've come to expect from British media. You invite me here under false pretenses, ambush me with selective statistics, and then have the audacity to lecture me about helping people. Hit job? Andrea's voice remained steady, but there was fire in her eyes now. I'm asking legitimate questions that any responsible journalist would ask. If you can't handle scrutiny of your public work, perhaps you shouldn't be putting yourself in the public eye. The studio audience was divided now, some murmuring approval of Andrea's tough questioning, while others shifted uncomfortably at what felt like a character assassination playing out in real time. Meghan's security detail had moved closer to the set, their presence suddenly much more noticeable as the confrontation spiraled beyond anyone's control. Scrutiny? Meghan laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and desperate. Is that what you call character assassination based on cherry-picked data? Because let me tell you something about scrutiny. Andrea, I've had every move dissected, every breath analyzed, every goddamn outfit criticized by people who wouldn't last 5 minutes dealing with the pressure I face daily. The pressure you face? Andrea's tone sharpened, and for the first time in the interview, Her professional mask slipped slightly. Meghan, you chose this life. You married into the royal family knowing exactly what it entailed. You can't claim victim status when you're living a life of extraordinary privilege that most people could never even dream of. That was the final straw. Meghan shot up from her chair so violently that it nearly toppled backward, her eyes blazing with a fury that made everyone in the studio take an instinctive step back. Victim status? Are you out of your mind? Do you have any idea what it's like to have your every movement stalked, your family threatened, your mental health pushed to the breaking point by relentless media harassment? Then why did you come back? Andrea fired back, standing to meet Meghan's energy. If British media is so terrible, if the scrutiny is so unbearable, why agree to this interview? Why not just stay in your California mansion and leave us all alone? The question hung in the air like a death sentence, and Meghan's response came with the force of years of pent-up frustration and rage. Because I thought, foolishly, apparently, that there might be one journalist in this godforsaken country who could conduct a fair interview instead of a fucking inquisition designed to tear me down. The profanity echoed through the studio, and several audience members audibly gasped. The other panelists looked mortified, clearly wanting to intervene, but not knowing how to de-escalate what had become a full-scale war. Andrea, however, seemed energized by the confrontation, her journalist instincts fully engaged. Fair? She shot back, her voice now matching Meghan's intensity. What's unfair about asking you to account for how charitable donations are spent? What's unfair about questioning the financial management of organizations that rely on public trust? These aren't personal attacks. These are the same questions we'd ask any public figure involved in charity work. But Meghan was beyond reason now, her anger having reached a boiling point that years of media training couldn't contain. Personal attacks? You just implied I'm nothing but a privileged American who should go back where she came from. If that's not personal, I don't know what the fuck is. The confrontation had reached a crescendo that nobody could have anticipated, and as both women stood facing each other across the small studio space, it was clear that something irreversible was about to happen. You want to know what's really unfair? Meghan's voice cracked with emotion, her finger now pointing directly at Andrea. What's unfair is being ambushed on national television by someone who clearly had their mind made up before I even walked through that door. You didn't invite me here for an interview. You invited me here for a public execution. Andrea's face flushed red, her own composure finally beginning to crack under the pressure. Don't you dare turn this around on me. I've been doing journalism for over 20 years, and I've never had a guest accuse me of ambush tactics when all I'm doing is asking the questions that need to be asked. Questions that need to be asked? Meghan's laugh was bitter and sharp. Or questions designed to generate headlines and boost your fucking ratings. Because let's be honest about what this really is. It's a desperate attempt by a failing show to stay relevant by taking down someone who actually makes a difference in the world. The studio erupted. Several audience members began shouting, some supporting Meghan, others backing Andrea. The camera operators were working frantically to capture every angle of the unprecedented meltdown unfolding before them. The other panelists sat frozen, clearly out of their depth as the situation spiraled completely beyond their control. Failing show? Andrea's voice rose to match Meghan's fury. We've been on air for over 2 decades. We've interviewed prime ministers, celebrities, and yes, even royalty, without ever having someone throw a tantrum like a spoiled child who can't handle being held accountable. That comparison hit Meghan like a physical blow. Her face contorted with rage as she took a step closer to Andrea, her security team immediately tensing and moving forward. Spoiled child? Are you fucking kidding me right now? I've dedicated my life to helping others, to using whatever platform I have to make positive change, and you're calling me a spoiled child? Then act like an adult, Andrea shot back, refusing to be intimidated. Answer the questions instead of having a meltdown. Explain how spending twice as much as you raise is helping anyone. Show some accountability instead of playing the victim card every time someone asks you to justify your actions. The words victim card seemed to flip a switch in Meghan's mind. Her entire demeanor changed, becoming ice-cold and dangerous in a way that made everyone in the studio take an instinctive step back. Victim card? She repeated slowly, her voice now deadly quiet. You think being subjected to years of racist harassment, death threats, and systematic character assassination is playing a victim card? I never mentioned race, Andrea began, but Meghan cut her off with a gesture so sharp it could have cut glass. You didn't have to. It's there in every loaded question, every impossible standard, every assumption that I'm somehow not worthy of the respect you'd automatically give to someone who looked different than me. This entire interview has been coated with the same prejudice that's followed me since day one in this country. The accusation of racism hung in the air like a live wire, and Andrea's face went white. That is completely unfair, and you know it. I would ask these same questions of anyone in your position, regardless of their background. Bullshit, Meghan exploded, her composure completely shattered. You would never ambush a white duchess with prepared attack documents. You would never question their charitable work with such venom. This is exactly the kind of institutional bias that drove me out of this toxic environment in the first place. Andrea was shaking now, clearly overwhelmed by the intensity of the confrontation and the serious nature of the accusations being leveled against her. I resent the implication that I'm racist. I'm asking legitimate journalistic questions. Legitimate? Meghan's voice reached a fever pitch. There's nothing legitimate about a predetermined hit job designed to humiliate and discredit. You brought me here under false pretenses, ambushed me with selective data, and then acted shocked when I refused to sit here and take your abuse. The studio was in chaos now. Audience members were on their feet, some recording with their phones despite security attempts to stop them. The other panelists were frantically trying to signal to the producers to cut to commercial, but the confrontation was too explosive to interrupt. If you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen, Andrea shouted, her professional facade completely abandoned. You wanted to be a public figure. You wanted the platform. You wanted the influence. Well, this comes with it. You don't get to pick and choose when you're held accountable. That was the final breaking point. Meghan's face twisted with a mixture of rage and disgust as she yanked off her microphone and hurled it to the floor with such force that it cracked against the studio tiles. You know what, Andrea? You're absolutely right. I don't have to sit here and take this shit from you or anyone else in this backwards prejudiced industry. She turned to address the audience directly, her voice carrying across the stunned silence that had fallen over the room. This is exactly why I left. This is exactly the kind of toxic bias treatment that makes this country impossible to live in with any dignity or peace. Andrea made one last desperate attempt to regain control of the situation. Meghan, if you would just calm down and discuss this rationally. Calm down? Meghan whirled around, her eyes blazing. Fuck your patronizing tone, and fuck this entire charade. I came here in good faith, thinking I could have an honest conversation about important work, and instead I walked into an orchestrated character assassination. With that, she grabbed her purse and strode toward the exit, her security team scrambling to keep up with her rapid pace. The cameras followed her every step as she made her way across the studio floor, her heels clicking sharply against the tiles in the sudden quiet. Just before reaching the exit, she turned back one final time, her voice carrying clearly across the stunned studio. This is the last time I make the mistake of trusting British media with anything approaching fairness or decency. You can all go to hell. The studio door slammed behind her with a resounding crash that seemed to echo through the shocked silence. For several long moments, nobody moved or spoke. Andrea stood frozen in the middle of the set, her face pale and her hands shaking as the reality of what had just transpired began to sink in. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every second of the aftermath as the most explosive confrontation in loose women history came to its dramatic conclusion, leaving viewers across the nation stunned by the raw intensity of what they had just witnessed unfold live on their television screens.